submarine was 14 nautical miles away when it launched, and nobody knew it was there. That sentence was the operational summary of an intelligence failure that would take analysts 4 weeks to partially explain and would never be fully explained, because the submarine that had operated for 6 days within 30 nautical miles of the destroyer's patrol station without being detected had not left enough acoustic evidence to reconstruct its full track. The post-engagement signals collection could establish that a Kilo-class diesel-electric submarine had been in the area. It could not establish when it arrived what course it had transited or whether it had been stationary or moving during the 6 days before the launch event. The destroyer is operating in the Gulf of Oman, 180 nautical miles southeast of the Strait of Hormuz, in water that is 2,200 meters deep, with thermal layering typical of the late-season Arabian Sea. A strong thermocline at 80 to 110 meters that dramatically limits the operational range of hull-mounted sonar against quiet submarine contacts. The AN/SQS-5 3C hull sonar, which had been tracking the biological returns and shipping noise of the area for 6 days, had not produced a single submarine contact candidate. The waters were assessed as clear. At 2:11 a.m., the SPY-6 radar detected the first airborne contacts. 6 days. The hull sonar had been in passive surveillance mode for 6 days, logging the biological returns of the Arabian Sea, sperm whales transiting northwest, dense layers of mid-water organisms producing diffuse scattering returns at dusk and dawn, the consistent broadband noise of commercial shipping on the Hormuz approach lanes. The water column was loud with life and commerce. The Kilo, running on electric propulsion at 2 to 3 knots on battery power, had been operating below the thermocline at 90 to 130 meters. A layer of water 8 to 12 degrees colder than the surface layer, which bent acoustic propagation paths away from the hull sonar's beam geometry. In those acoustic conditions, a Kilo on silent running was not detectable at ranges beyond 5 to 8 kilometers by a hull-mounted sonar not actively pinging in its direction. Nobody had been actively pinging bearing 162 because bearing 162 was open ocean with no assessed threat. Not from the direction of the Iranian coast, not from the direction of Yemen. From bearing 162, south-southeast, open ocean, there was nothing at bearing 162. No land within 600 nautical miles in that direction. No known launch site. The contacts were emerging from directly below, rising through 200 meters altitude from what the radar's elevation data indicated was a launch point at or very close to the ocean surface. Surface launch from open ocean, a maritime militia vessel, or a submarine that had surfaced briefly to conduct a vertical launch, or a submarine capable of launching from a shallow depth through a vertical launch system that cleared the ocean surface on its own propulsion. The contact count was still building as the radar resolved them. 22, 31, 37, 40, all bearing 162, range 26 kilometers, altitude climbing through 280 meters, speed building to 185 kilometers per hour as the GPS guidance locked and the platforms stabilized into their cruise configuration. 40 contacts, 26 kilometers. At 185 kilometers per hour, the contacts were 8.4 minutes from the ship's position. The TAO processed the detection picture in under 5 seconds. 40 contacts from open ocean, 26 kilometers, 8.4 minutes. The outer ring of SM-6 engagement was at 40 to 150 kilometers. The contacts were already inside the outer ring before they had been detected. The SM-6 had not had an engagement window. The first defensive layer available was the SM-2 at its close-in edge, and at 26 kilometers, The SM-2 was operating at its minimum optimal range with a compressed engagement timeline that provided approximately 60 to 80 seconds of SM-2 intercept time before the contacts reached ESSM range. All systems battle stations now. Weapons free. SM-2 immediate, all contacts. ESSM standby. No SM-6 window. Contacts are too close. Submarine contact possible. Bearing 162. Range 26 kilometers. ASROC on standby. Running count 2:11 a.m. Second 040. UAV contacts bearing 162. Range 26 kilometers. Altitude 280 to 380 meters. 185 kilometers per hour. Origin, ocean surface bearing 162. SM-6 engagement window, none. Contacts inside minimum effective range. SM-2, 24 cells, immediate engagement. ESSM, 32. RAM, 21. CIWS, 100%. ASROC, 8. Submarine possibility. Time to first hull impact if nothing engaged, 8 minutes, 24 seconds. Cost, $0. The SM-2 engagement at 26 kilometers was at the system's near minimum effective range for a target profile this small. The SM-2 Block 3A's published engagement envelope extended from approximately 8 kilometers to 160 kilometers against anti-ship missile profiles. But the outer and inner boundaries of that envelope were where engagement efficiency was lowest. At 26 kilometers, the semi-active radar guidance had less than 80 seconds of flight time to complete its mid-course phase and transition to terminal seeker acquisition. The fire control illuminator needed to maintain continuous track through that 80-second window, and the SM-2 seeker needed to acquire the target in a compressed terminal basket. Against 40 simultaneous contacts at this range, the fire control system was computing engagement solutions at maximum rate and launching as fast as the VLS tubes could clear and rearm. SM-2 cells 1 through 8 launched in a 3.4-second sequence. Faster than standard, the fire control system running its launch cycle at maximum authorized rate because 3.4 seconds at 26 kilometers was 67 meters of contact closure at 185 kilometers per hour. Every fraction of a second the launch was delayed was distance the contacts used. While SM-2 cells were launching, the submarine question had not been answered. 26 kilometers. Bearing 162. The hull sonar was now in active mode. The TAO had authorized active sonar immediately with the detection, accepting the tactical signature that active sonar transmissions would produce against the submarine in exchange for the only realistic chance of locating it. Active sonar at this range and the likely kilo position. The transmission would reach the submarine in approximately 9 to 13 seconds, depending on depth and exact range. The sonar operator was building a picture from nothing. No prior contact, no track, just a launch origin that was probably 26 kilometers to the southeast and a water depth of 2,200 meters, in which a Kilo-class submarine on electric propulsion could be nearly invisible. SM-2 results at 2:13 a.m., 80 seconds after the first launches, consistent with the compressed engagement timeline. 8 launches against 8 contacts, 6 intercepts, 2 misses. At 26-kilometer engagement range, 75% hit rate was below the published optimum, but within the compressed timeline expectation. 34 contacts remaining. Running count. 2:13 a.m., second 112, SM-2 first salvo. 8 launched, 6 intercepts, 2 misses. 34 contacts at 22 to 26 kilometers. Submarine, bearing 163, range 26.4 kilometers, active sonar acquired. SM-2, 16 remaining. ESSM, 32. RAM 21, ASROC 8, CIWS 100%. Cost $9.6 million. Time 2 minutes. SM-2 cells, 9 through 16. 8 more. The fire control system was selecting the highest confidence tracks and sequencing engagements at maximum rate. 5 intercepts, 3 misses, 26 contacts remaining at 19 to 22 kilometers. Running count: 2:14 a.m., second 165, SM-2, 8 remaining. 26 contacts at 19 to 22 kilometers. SM-6 was not engaged, no window. Hull sonar, active, no submarine contact yet. ASROC 8 cells, submarine location unconfirmed. ESSM 32, RAM 21. CIWS 100%. Cost $19.2 million. Time 3 minutes. SM-2 cells, 17 through 22. 6 cells, 6 contacts at 15 to 19 kilometers. 4 intercepts, 2 misses. SM-2 cells, 23 and 24. The last 2, SM-2, against 2 contacts at 13 kilometers. 2 intercepts. SM-2 inventory, 0. 20 contacts remaining at 11 to 17 kilometers. ESSM range. At 2:15 a.m., the sonar operator produced the first definitive return. Submarine contact, bearing 163, range 26.4 kilometers. Depth assessment, 40 to 60 meters. Speed, 3 to 4 knots. Contact is very quiet. Processing, this is a kilo or kilo class equivalent. 26 kilometers. Range 163, 1 degree from the contact's launch bearing. Depth 40 to 60 meters. Moving at 3 to 4 knots, barely more than hovering. The submarine had launched its drone payload at minimum speed in an attempt to maintain acoustic signature below detection threshold, had achieved that until the active sonar ping reached it, and was now the secondary engagement problem running simultaneously with 20 remaining contacts. The ASROC had 8 cells. The VLASROC Mark 54 torpedo had an effective range of 22 kilometers and had a confirmed hit probability against a kilo-class target of approximately 55% in favorable acoustic conditions. The submarine was at 26.4 kilometers, slightly outside the ASROC's most reliable engagement range. An ASROC fired now would be a stretched range engagement with reduced confidence. If the ASROC did not engage, the submarine would have time to execute a reload cycle, if it carried reload drone payload, or depart the area at maximum submerged speed. Either scenario was unacceptable. The ASROC had to engage now. ASROC, 2 cells. Submarine contact bearing 163, range 26.4 kilometers. Fire. VLASROC cells 1 and 2 launched at 2:15 a.m. The 2 rockets burned northeast toward a contact 26 kilometers away, while simultaneously ESSM was engaging the drone contacts from the original launch. 2 simultaneous fights. Missiles in the air against drones, ASROC burning toward a submarine. The fire control system managing both. The same crew managing both. Running count: 2:16 a.m., second 302. ASROC times 2 and flight to submarine. SM-2, 0. 20 drone contacts at 11 to 17 kilometers. ESSM, 32. RAM, 21. CIWS, 100%. Submarine, range 26.6 kilometers, depth increasing, accelerating. ASW fight and drone fight now simultaneous. Cost, $21.3 million. Time, 5 minutes. ESSM cells, 1 through 12 against 12. Drone contacts at 11 to 15 kilometers. 9 intercepts, 3 misses. The compressed earlier engagement timeline had put 3 contacts in sea-skimming configuration before the ESSM phase open, and those contacts were producing below-nominal ESSM performance. 8 contacts remaining. ESSM cells 13 through 20 against 8, contacts at 7 to 11 kilometers. 5 intercepts, 3 misses, 5 contacts inside 6 kilometers. RAM cells 1 through 8 against 5 contacts at 3.8 to 5.9 kilometers. 4 intercepts, 1 miss. Running count, 2:18 a.m., second 416. Drone fight, 1 contact, 2.4 kilometers, CIWS. ASW fight, ASROC times 2 in flight, 90 seconds to submarine. SM-2, 0. ESSM, 12 remaining. RAM, 13. CIWS, 100%. Total drone contacts, 39 neutralized, 1 remaining. Submarine, confirmed. Range, 26.4 kilometers. Depth, 40 to 60 meters. Cost, $35.4 million. Time, 7 minutes. 1 drone contact at 2.4 kilometers. The CIWS forward acquired at 2,100 meters. Burst, 0.8 seconds, 60 rounds. Contact fragmented at 1,800 meters. Warhead initiated. The pressure event at 1,800 meters arrived at the hull as a sharp concussive impact felt throughout the ship. 6 fragment impacts on the forward hull above the waterline. No structural damage, no penetration. Drone fight complete. The ASROC was still in flight. The Mk-54 torpedoes entered the water at 2:18 a.m. plus 48 seconds, approximately 108 seconds after launch at the ASROC's maximum range stretch point. Both Mark 54 units began their active search patterns around the sonar contact's estimated position. The submarine had been moving at 3 to 4 knots when acquired. In 108 seconds, it had moved approximately 230 meters. The Mark 54 search pattern was 500-meter radius, sufficient to cover the movement if the submarine maintained course and speed. The Kilo's countermeasure response. The sonar return immediately after the ASROC launch had shown the submarine accelerating to approximately 7 knots and altering course 35 degrees left. A reactive dive to deeper water combined with a course change designed to take the submarine outside the Mark 54's search cone. First Mark 54, active pinging, 28-second search window. The contact had moved 300 meters from the initial estimated position. The Mark 54 search cone, based on the ASROC's targeting solution and the Mark 54's own inertial navigation, was offset from the contact's new position. No acquisition within the search window. The Mark 54 entered an extended search and eventually ran out its fuel pattern. No intercept. Second Mark 54. The updated sonar track. The hull sonar was now holding the submarine on its active ping cycle with improving track quality, had provided a more accurate estimated position for the second ASROC's Mark 54. Acquisition at 2:20 a.m. plus 12 seconds. The Mark 54 homed on the acoustic signature of the Kilo's electric motor at its new speed and heading. Track maintained. Contact at 2:20 a.m. plus 38 seconds. The sonar registered the acoustic signature of the Mark 54 detonation, followed by the acoustic signature of hull flooding, the specific pattern of ballistic noise that the AN/SQS-53C associates with significant damage to a submarine hull. 1 ASROC hit. Unknown damage level. The submarine's acoustic signature became erratic. Speed varied from 2 to 9 knots over the following 3 minutes, depth varying inconsistently. It had not surfaced. It had not produced an emergency buoy transmission. It was still moving, but irregularly. Running count. 2:21 a.m., second 604, drone fight, complete, all 40 neutralized. ASW result, ASROC-1, no acquisition. ASROC-2, Mark 54 detonation confirmed, hull flooding signature detected. Submarine status, damaged, erratic movement, not surfaced, range 27.8 kilometers, bearing 161, ASROC 6 remaining, SM-2 0, ESSM 12, RAM 13, CIWS 4 93%, hull damage 6 fragment impacts, non-structural, cost $37.5 million, time 10 minutes. The damaged submarine's acoustic signature continued for 22 minutes after the Mark 54 detonation. At 2:43 a.m., the hull sonar lost the contact. The contact had moved to a range of 31 kilometers, and the active sonar return quality had been declining. Whether the submarine had gone deep, gone silent, or sunk was not determinable from the sonar data. The damage acoustic signature at 2:20 a.m. had been consistent with pressure hull damage, but not necessarily catastrophic failure. Running count, 2:22 a.m., second 664, drone fight complete. ASW, ASRO, C1 miss, ASROC2, Mark 54 detonation confirmed. Submarine. Hull flooding signature, erratic movement, range 28.2 kilometers. ASROC 6 remaining, SM-2 0, ESSM 12, RAM 13, CIWS 4 93%. Hull 6 fragment impacts, non-structural. Cost $37.5 million. Time 11 minutes. The damage assessment on the destroyer at 4 a.m. 6 fragment impacts from the drone warhead detonation at 1,800 meters, all above the waterline, all cosmetic or minor structural. Largest impact, a 25-millimeter penetration through a non-structural hull plate. No flooding, no watertight compromise, no personnel injuries from the drone engagement. One crew member had sustained a minor concussion from a fall during the emergency battle station's response. Treated, returned to duty within 2 hours. The magazine assessment at 4:05 a.m., SM-6, 8 of 8 fully loaded. Not applicable. No engagement window. SM-2, 0-24. ESSM, 12 of 32 remaining. RAM, 13 of 21 remaining. VLASROC, 6 of 8 remaining. CIWS forward, 93%. CIWS aft, 100%. The SM-6 cells had not fired. The most expensive interceptors in the ship's inventory, representing $16.8 million in ready ordnance, had not been relevant because the submarine's launch position had placed the contacts inside the SM-6's minimum practical engagement geometry from the first second of detection. Running count 2:43 a.m., second 1922. Submarine signal lost at 31 kilometers. Status unknown. Drone fight 40 out of 40 neutralized. SM-6 8 unused, no window. SM-2 0. ESSM 12. RAM 13. ASROC 6. CIWS 4 93%, aft 100%. Hull 6 fragment impacts, non-structural. Total engagement 10 minutes drone fight plus 32 minutes ASW tracking. Cost $47.1 million. The supply officer assembled the accounting at 6 a.m. 40 commercial derivative drone platforms at $12,000 each, $480,000. The Kilo-class submarine's operational cost for the launch mission, transit, station keeping, launch, recovery, or loss. The submarine was an asset whose full cost was amortized across its operational life, but the marginal cost of this specific mission, including the drone payload and operational support, was estimated at $1.8 to $3.2 million. Call it $2 million. Total adversary investment, approximately $2.48 million. U.S. munitions expended. 24 SM-2 at $1.2 million to $28.8 million. 20 ESSM at $450,000 to $9 million. 8 RAM at $900,000 to $7.2 million. 2 VLASROC at $1.05 million to $2.1 million. CIWS $11,000. total $47.1 million. Exchange ratio, 19-1 in the adversary's favor. The ratio was one of the lower figures in this analysis series. But the ratio did not capture the engagement's strategic innovation. The adversary had not simply sent 40 drones from a submarine. They had used the submarine to solve the destroyer's most significant defensive advantage, the detection range that provided the engagement timeline for SM-6 and SM-2 to operate in their optimal zones. The SM-6 at 80 kilometers was an efficient weapon with 82% hit probability and a flight time that allowed clean track development and seeker acquisition. Against a contact detected at 26 kilometers, there was no SM-6 window at all. The SM-2 at 26 kilometers was a compressed, lower probability engagement operating at the minimum end of its effective range. The entire defensive advantage of long-range engagement had been neutralized by a submarine that got close before launching. The cost of achieving that tactical position, 1 Kilo submarine and its 6-day patrol. A Kilo-class diesel-electric submarine cost approximately $300 million to build and was worth $300 million plus its crew and training investment. That asset had been risked and had been damaged to enable 40 drones to approach from 26 kilometers rather than from the standard coastal launch distance of 60 to 80 kilometers. The result? The SM-6 was irrelevant, the SM-2 was compressed, the ESSM and RAM absorbed the engagement burden, and one drone reached 1,800 meters. The adversary had traded the tactical position of a Kilo submarine, and potentially the submarine itself, given the Mark 54 detonation and hull flooding signature, for the ability to bypass the destroyer's outer ring. Whether that trade was strategically rational depended on the relative value of the submarine versus the cost it imposed on the defense. The submarine was worth $300 million. It had forced the destruction of $47.1 million in U.S. interceptors and had demonstrated the viability of submarine-launched drone operations as a long-range engagement bypass. At $47.1 million in U.S. expenditure against a $2.48 million adversary marginal cost, the tactical exchange was 19-1. At $47.1 million against the full submarine asset cost, if lost, the strategic calculation was exactly inverted. The adversary had spent $300 million in submarine risk to force $47.1 million in U.S. expenditure. This inversion was the central tension of submarine-launched drone operations. It was tactically efficient and strategically expensive for the adversary simultaneously. The question of whether it would be repeated depended entirely on whether the adversary assessed the demonstration value, proving the concept worked, documenting the U.S. defensive response, establishing the baseline for future iterations, was worth the cost. The intelligence assessment at 8 a.m. concluded that the operation had been at least partially a demonstration operation. The drone payload, while operationally real, had been smaller than what a single Kilo-class submarine could theoretically carry in a fully configured drone launcher tube arrangement. The 40 platforms fired were consistent with a proof-of-concept payload rather than a maximum effort strike. The submarine had launched and appeared to have held its position briefly enough to allow post-launch damage assessment before departing. The demonstration had worked. The concept had been validated. The adversary now knew that a submarine-launched drone operation from 26 kilometers bypassed the SM-6 outer ring and created compressed SM-2 engagement geometry that reduced hit probability across the engagement. The data they had collected was specific and operationally valuable. The SM-2 hit rate at near minimum range the ESSM engagement capacity against contacts that had already reached sea-skimming altitude before the outer ring could address them. The CIWS ammunition expenditure for a single terminal contact, and the ASROC response time from detection to water entry. All of it documented in the engagement timeline. All of it available for analysis and planning for the next iteration. They would not need to repeat the demonstration. They would need to deploy it at scale. Emergency resupply transmitted at 5:14 a.m. SM2 priority. ESSM and RAM secondary. ASROC top priority for resupply sequencing. ETA 4 days. The submarine, whose acoustic signature had gone quiet at 31 kilometers at 2:43 a.m., status unknown. The post-engagement intelligence assessment had not confirmed its loss. It had not confirmed its survival. The hull flooding acoustic signature had been real. Whether the submarine had been able to manage the flooding and continue operations or had suffered progressive flooding leading to loss was not determinable from surface sonar data at 31 kilometers. The question would remain open until the submarine either appeared at an Iranian port, was detected by other intelligence assets, or confirmed its loss through the absence of both of those events. For the next 4 days during resupply transit, the destroyer would be operating in the Gulf of Oman with a depleted mid-range missile inventory and the knowledge that somewhere in the 2,200-meter water column around it, there might or might not be a damaged Kilo-class submarine whose crew might or might not be attempting to reload and conduct another launch operation. The hull sonar was in continuous active mode. The ASROC cells that remained, 6 of 8, were armed and allocated against the bearing 163 tracks last estimated position. The submarine question was not resolved. It was simply waiting for resolution on a timeline the ship did not control.